We all remember the choices that shaped the course of our lives. In business, world-renowned venture capital firm Sequoia Capital calls them crucible moments. Their podcast brings you inside the pivotal decisions that define some of today's most influential companies. Hosted by Sequoia's Roelof Botha, Crucible Moments Season 3 pulls back the curtain on the untold stories behind companies like Zipline, Palo Alto Networks, Supercell, and more. Hear about the make-or-break decisions, early stumbles, and leaps of faith that turn scrappy startups into market-defining forces. Once you're caught up on Season 3, check out some of the episodes from Seasons 1 and 2, with guests like Stephen Chen of YouTube, Tony Xu of DoorDash, Steve Huffman of Reddit, Brian Chetsky of Airbnb, and more. Tune in to Sequoia's new season of Crucible Moments to discover how some of the most transformational companies of the modern era were built. Crucible Moments is available everywhere you get your podcasts and at cruciblemoments.com. Go listen to Crucible Moments today.
On Deck is built to back small businesses like yours. Whether you're buying equipment, expanding your team, or bridging cash flow gaps, On Deck's loans up to $250,000 help make it happen fast. Rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau and earning thousands of 5-star Trustpilot reviews, On Deck delivers funding you can count on. Apply in minutes at OnDeck.com. Depending on certain loan attributes, your business loan may be issued by OnDeck or Celtic Bank. OnDeck does not lend in North Dakota. All loans and amounts subject to lender approval.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving, and much, much more. My name is Bodie, and I am your host. And today I am recording from the lobby of my doctor's office. There's nobody in here. There's just me. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take an opportunity to record this intro. So I promise you the audio quality of the interview is way better than the audio quality of the intro and outro. I had an opportunity to sit down with Matt Paneitz, and Matt is with an organization called Long Way Home, and they work in Guatemala. They have a school there, and they're teaching sustainable building, and they're empowering young people with real world schools and sending those kids out once they have those skills into the community and helping make their community better. So Matt and I have a great conversation. I don't want to give too much of it away, but this is, green building meets grassroots change. And Matt's going to talk about the tools that's helping, these communities build resilience, literally from the ground up. So let's go ahead and welcome Matt to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out. I wish more charities would reach out in this kind of space. We're going to talk a little bit about Long Way Home, which I'll give a nice description of in the beginning. But I wonder, because I'm sure you're going to be able to do it better than me, can you describe the mission of Long Way Home and kind of how it's evolved since the organization began?
Yeah. Wow, it's been quite a process. We are nothing like what we started. Look, as we started off highly focused on youth recreation, and we built a city park, and we wanted to build after-school youth sports programs. And we built the city park, and the park is still running today. But while we were building the park, we found out that there are slightly more pressing issues than recreation, such as survival. And then we adjusted our mission. And now our mission is a little more focused on sustainable practices, right? We saw that people need jobs. So there's something about employment in our mission. We saw that the people need infrastructure, right? And we need that infrastructure. They need that infrastructure to be green. So we added that to our mission, and education, right? Because there is a whole bunch of people who are not being educated beyond the 6th grade. And so we decided to add all of that to our mission. and are now also, we've integrated the practice of building democracy. So yeah, we're evolving.
And then what would that look like if you were just hanging out with somebody in the coffee shop? What would that look like? How would you explain that to them?
Yeah, I would, probably stutter a little bit because we don't really have a great 30-second elevator pitch. There are too many there's there are too many layers to what we do to say, okay, here's your elevator pitch. But what I would say now is, if I had that 30 seconds, I would probably say that there's a whole lot of poverty, and that means that there's people suffering. And so we're looking at strategies to end that suffering as soon as we possibly can. And so we built a school out of trash. Now we're using that school to educate people so that we can build a group. If you don't mind the word, an army, build an army of people that can go out into the community and relieve some of that suffering. And we build infrastructure, we create jobs, and we try to do it in a short, medium, and long-term fashion, right? So there's no short version of that, really.
No. I mean, just going through your website, it is packed with information. So yes, are you operating primarily in Guatemala, or, like, for instance, let's start with the park that you built. Was that in Guatemala, or was that somewhere else?
Yeah, I did my Peace Corps service, and that's why I'm there at all.
Oh, okay.
Because I Peace Corps volunteer in 2002 and 2003, and then the organization that I worked with as a Peace Corps volunteer said, "Hey, if you want to come back and build this city park, you can." And that drew me back. And that was in San Juan Comalapa in the Western Highlands, about 90 kilometers west of Guatemala City. And in Guatemala.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the school. Is that your most recent project? Because I've I found a lot of things on your website fascinating, and I'm going to try to stay focused, Matt, because I could jump off into any number of things. But let's concentrate on the school. Was that something recent that you've done?
Yeah, the school's really the focal point of of everything that we do, right? If you could think of that as like our main hub of all of our activities, right? The organization is called Long Way Home, and conceivably Long Way Home has one project. That project is Hero School. And then everything that we do is born out of Hero School, because as an educational institution, we're set up to fight poverty. We do it with our students, we do it with our teachers, we do it with our green builders. We are set up to build floors, water tanks, to educate, to, bring relief to the people in the area. So yeah, Hero School is our current number one and primary project. And we're not the NGO that's built 500 schools. We're 17 years into building one school.
And then from that, building that one school, um, it looks like you have a library and a cistern, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not your average, like, one building school. We built 22 buildings on our campus, and each of the buildings that we did slightly different, right? Because we wanted to integrate the use of building with rubbish, right? And post-consumer plastic, I was recently told, is a better way to refer to plastic, rather than calling it trash or rubbish, give it a better name. And so, the first building we built out of tires. The next building we built out of plastic bottles. The next building we built out of earth bags, which is, polypropylene bags filled with dirt. The next building we did out of bamboo. So every one of our buildings on our campus is slightly different, because they all represent what's possible as far as infrastructure goes that we could replicate in the community. That's why you see on the campus water tanks and dry compost latrines and, a variety of possibilities, because we wanted to try everything out before we decided to start building this infrastructure for the community at large.
I know a lot of folks that are like into earth ships, which is like, you basically use post-consumer materials, we'll say, like tires, and they'll build up walls and then they'll cover it with dirt. Was that something you did for the school, or how did you use the tires for that?
Yeah, that's where we came up with the idea. So whenever we finished the park and I wanted to, deal with other things in the community, I asked the co-founder of Long Way Home, I was like, hey, you want to build a school? And he goes, sure. Right. And he said, do you want to build a school using post-consumer materials? Of course, we probably called it trash at the time. And I
Right.
said, of course. What in the world are you talking about? He showed me the Earthship book. And with the Earthship book, you can basically follow the instructions because it's kind of like an instruction manual. And that's how we learned how to build with tires. So we put the book in the middle of the job site and followed the steps one by one. On top of that, we were builders to begin with. So we have some idea what they were talking about. But yeah, that's how we learned how to do it. Earthship Biotecture Volume 1.
Nice. Have you met the guy that does the earth ships? He like brings volunteers in to learn how to do the whole process.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't remember
And
his
we're
name.
still, yeah, Michael Reynolds.
That's right.
And the Earthship crew, because we were new to the tire thing, they actually reached out to us. They heard about what we were doing, that we were using tires in construction in Guatemala. They reached out to us, invited us to Taos, hung out, went on some of their builds, all became friends, and I'm friends with most of them today, right? And so yeah, there's still a pretty tight connection between EcoHab, which is born out of Earthship, and a lot of the other people. A lot of the people from that organization went on their own, and we're friends with a lot of them.
Nice. There's a lot of thermal advantages with having a earth ship type building, right? Can you just go over some of the other advantages? I mean, not the least of which is that we're keeping things out of landfills and reusing them and keeping them going. But what are some of the other? Are there any other advantages that we might not think of?
Sure. Where we are in Comalapa in Guatemala is earthquake prone, right? And they're still kind of waiting on the big one. They get regular, fours and fives. But what they're, what I've seen having lived in the tire buildings for many years, that when there are tremors, that the building moves with the tremor rather than against it, right? So it doesn't have, if the building was built out of cinder blocks, it would fracture, right? And it would break along seams. Well, tire buildings, the rubber within the walls absorbs the movement of the tremor.
Nice,
So yeah, I kind of ride out the tremors whenever I'm living in one of the buildings. I actually feel really safe.
nice. What are some of the other challenges? Because like power, is power readily available, or is that something that you have to use solar for, or wind?
Yeah, it depends on how far out you get, right? We're maybe a half a mile from the center of town, and there was not electricity on our property before we got there. So we had to ask the municipality to bring electricity and bring the power lines. But like right now, what we're experiencing is the power lines are not strong enough to power our computer lab, right? So now we're looking into solar, and we don't have, city drainage. So we process all of our black and gray water on site. We're kind of out there on an island dealing with all of our own stuff because the municipal services have not gotten to us yet.
Gotcha. So, I mean, I'm guessing you bring in your own water, or
We do.
you collect your own water. Rainy climate, Um,
Yeah, it rains 6 months out of the year. So we capture most of the rainwater that we need, at least for 6 months, on our rooftops.
and then I know with the earth ships that the house itself or the ship itself can do some of the filtration through plants and things like that. Are you taking advantage of that?
We do have a flush system as well, but Guatemala is not as cold as Taos, right? Taos gets below zero, and where we are in Comalapa is pretty well stays between 55 and 75 degrees all the time.
Oh, nice.
So we don't have the greenhouses on the front of the houses like you would with an airship, because it's not that cold. And the tires stay warm enough without the greenhouse that you don't really need to add the greenhouse. Like, you walk into one of our tire buildings, and if it's cold outside a little bit, you walk in and all of a sudden it's 68 degrees inside.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Are there any other technical technical challenges that you've encountered that you want to bring up before we move on?
Not really. I mean, the whole thing of, living and working in Guatemala is a technical challenge, the entire thing. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, we can move on.
So obviously this school is for the community. So how do the community members participate in the design and the build process?
Well, we were the co-founder and I picked up the Earthship book. I don't think anybody in the town had ever heard of building with a tire before, right? As we had never heard of building with a tire before. And so whenever we decided to do our pilot project before we started building the campus, we had a couple of local builders on our crew who helped us build the park, and they were in on the process. And we go, okay, here's a sledgehammer. We're now going to pound dirt into the tire for 8 hours a day for, a couple of weeks in a row.
It's a lot of work.
And they saw us doing it, and we did it, and we all did it together, and we worked through, the difficulties of doing that, because sometimes you could pound the tire too. We didn't know how much to pound the tire exactly. The book can tell you a lot, but it can't exactly tell you everything. And so we worked all of those details out, and we did it all with locals. Like, when we needed tires, we asked locals to source the tires. We went with them and drove a flatbed truck along the Inter-American Highway and picked them up 5, 6 at a time. So we rely on the locals for all of our materials. Now, as far as design goes, that was our co-founder. He pretty well put it all together and then asked Guatemalan officials, architects, engineers, what they think. And we got advice along the way. But our co-founder pretty well put the entire thing together.
Nice. And then obviously the education part of it is huge, but how are the community members using the school?
Yeah, so the school is a public sustainability demonstration, and we are giving tours all the time because nobody's ever heard of most of what we do. And so when you walk onto our campus and a classroom of kids from the neighboring town does a field trip to visit our school, they're seeing all of this for the first time, most of them, right? And what we charge to get onto our campus, because they'll write us ahead of time and we'll say, bring your plastic. And as your fee for visiting our campus. And
Nice.
they haven't really done that before either. And so, yeah, they're getting exposure first and foremost to these concepts. Some of them take this exposure and they apply it back on their campuses, right? And then some of them will come and volunteer, and they will learn how to do it. Now, what we're seeing is, like, as we, provide this public sustainability demonstration and this exposure, that tire retaining walls are popping up all over the place because they're such a wonderful option when you compare it to the expense of using concrete and rock to build your retaining walls. Yeah, we're there and available to the folks who, outside of using it as a school, use it as an, learning place for learning.
So what grades are we talking about? And I know not every country has the same schooling system that we have in terms of some countries go over 12th grade, some countries go less. What are we looking at?
Yeah, Guatemala is slightly different than the U.S. in the sense that, yes, we do pre-K all the way through high school, but high school has a couple of options here. And you can do like 2 years of high school, which is its own thing, and then you can do 3 years. And they're mostly career-based, right? And so we're doing science and letters so that we can focus on, improving the quality of science and reading in our high school. But there's also secretary high schools and builder high schools and mechanic high schools, like they're usually pretty focused on some type of a vocation, but ours is more generalized.
And then are there programs open for like the adults in the community too? Kind of not necessarily like a night school, but I'm sure there's opportunities to continue that education even when they're done with school.
Yeah, and we've tried to put a few things together that haven't really taken off at our school. But yeah, there are options in our town of adult education and adult training, and the government usually provides most of that.
Nice. And then what has in terms of like the reaction from the community, you did share that, they helped collect material and things like that for building, but what's been the overall reaction of the community? Because you've been there long enough now where the newness is worn off. Are we still getting the same level of support, more support?
Well, we've earned, we have a reputation there, and our reputation is people that work really hard, follow through on their promises, and quietly go about their business, right? If you ask around town, what are- they call us the Escuela de Llantas, the tire school, right? So, along with the way that people have labeled us and the way that we built our reputation, yeah, I would think that we're in a really good spot with the local people because we educate their children and we do it well. And they're all involved. Like, there's 178 students. All those students come from the town. So that means their parents are in the town. So that means their parents are very familiar with what we're doing because they visit the campus. They're engaged in the entire process. We also work with local vendors, right? We've spent a lot of money to build that campus, and people appreciate it when you spend money in their stores.
Sure.
And that goes over really well. And we've employed, I think we're the number one employer in that town. And when you create jobs in a place where there's not a lot of job options, that goes over really well. We've trained a lot of people on green building. And so I think we're considered kind of like the, good people, maybe a little kooky as far as building out of rubbish and whatnot. But yeah, we've earned the respect of the locals with all of the hard work that we've done.
Nice. Nice. And is there volunteer opportunities? Like if somebody wanted to go and volunteer, much like you did with Peace Corps, or maybe they wanted to volunteer just to kind of learn more about how to start something that similar to what you're doing.
Yeah, volunteers have been crucial throughout this entire thing, right? As we were working with the locals, we were also working with volunteers. We're a small NGO with, not a huge staff budget. So we rely on the kindness of people to come along and stay in our volunteer house and then work 40 hours a week, And so the volunteers are why that we've made the progress that we have and haven't spent too terribly much money to do that, right? And so volunteers helped us put all these buildings up, and we're still putting buildings up, and we're still doing infrastructure. So there are still opportunities to volunteer, to spend time and brain power, right? Because there's a lot of really good ideas that come from people all over the world. Because when they volunteer, they're like, hey, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? And we're not trying to say that we've thought of everything. So people's ideas are always welcome in our space. We need them. That's how we thrive.
I like that. Okay. I have found, I'm 51, right? So I have found that a lot of things in my life I expected to be one way when I started it out, and then it completely changed, right? So when a volunteer comes in, typically what are their, what, what have they expressed their, like, what they're going to get out of this? And then by the end of it, what did they actually get out of it? And it's not I don't know how to put this in a polite way. So excuse me.
Go ahead.
But it's typically like, hey, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna build um, structures, or I'm gonna work on the property and that kind of thing, and that's what you're getting into, but that at the end you got something else out of it. Does that make better sense? And maybe not as insulting.
No, I get your drift. So, people like on paper, what we offer is that you're going to learn, right? And that you'll potentially have a life-changing experience, which is a lot to claim. And most people get the learning part, right? They come in, they green build with us, they work with our local team, and then we're trying to offer the experience of a lifetime. And that does happen for some people, in which they're like, oh my gosh, I'd never had any idea that anything like this was going on. Thank you for giving me exposure, for keeping me safe, for letting me know. Because we're not on the tourist trail, right? There's a lot of tourist towns where you go to the tourist towns and you're kind of treated like a tourist, like, somebody who's potentially going to buy something um, whenever you're walking through the tourist areas. That is not necessarily how people are treated whenever they come to volunteer with us. So they get exposure and access to the local Guatemalan folks who are sustainable farmers or sustenance farmers, right? So they're the nicest people on the earth. And so when you combine all those factors of learning, kindness, experience, yeah, a lot of times what people get is the experience of a lifetime.
And then what is the, like, if I was to go there, my Spanish, even though I work in a predominantly Hispanic community, right? I'm a firefighter, so I work in a predominantly Hispanic community. A lot of folks only speak Spanish. I just have never been able to pick up the language, which is a good thing because we have a guy on our truck that speaks perfect Spanish. What, like, do you need to have any particular skills? Do you need to speak Spanish? Do you need to have, like, what are some of the criteria to volunteer?
It'd be nice, and it is nice when people do speak Spanish because they can talk to the teachers and the kids and the vendors and the builders, and you can have more in-depth conversations about what it is like to be there and to live there and to work with us. But it's not necessary because now our builders have been interacting with volunteers from all over the world for such a long time that they understand the basics of English, and most people understand the basics of Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't, then people can point at stuff, like, there's a lot of body language and motions that bridge those gaps. A lot of smiles, a lot of laughter, and that makes it work, right? And because, our builders know some English, but not enough to have a full conversation necessarily. But yeah, they're working their way through it, and that's what people do.
Yeah, I'm really excited about Apple's translation, and I know Google has this for Android as well. The translation. I've not been able to get it to work to this point, but someday I'm sure it will work. But in March, I took my family, or my wife and I took our family to Thailand, and we had some friends there. They don't speak any English. We don't speak any Thai other than hello, thank you, and maybe one other word that is escaping me, shy, which is just yes. So I got those three words down. But we're sitting in the back of a van driving from central Thailand to northern Thailand, and we're doing is Google Translate back and forth and then showing each other. And then you have to go through and you're like, oh, I don't think they translated that word quite right because they'll look at you weird. But I do think going forward with technology, I think that will kind of that gap is narrowing for communication because these people they became we already knew somebody that knew them, but they were our friends by the end of the 3 or 4 day trip that we were all hanging out together. So
yeah, and we're experiencing some of that as well. When people need a taxi to go from the airport in Guatemala City out to our site, I used to arrange everything. Now Google Translate is making it possible for the taxi driver to connect directly through WhatsApp with the passenger, with the volunteer, and they're able to sort through all of the details. And I usually create some type of group so I can keep an eye on things. But yeah, it's all Google Translate. They're all talking to each other and they don't need my help really at all. Same thing around town. I've seen lots of volunteers pull out their phones and go, where is the library? Where is the closest restroom? And everybody's picking up on this. And it's working pretty seamlessly these days.
Yeah, no, it's a lot better than it was 20 years ago, for sure. For sure. And then we've talked a little bit about, the relationship with the residents, and we've touched on local leaders a little bit as well. But what is your relationship with the local leaders? And I mean, I would imagine there are, different things that you have to abide by as far as regulations, and like you mentioned, getting structural engineers in to make sure everything's cool. Um, how has that relationship been over the years?
Yeah, at first we were quiet. We went about our business. We didn't ask the municipality for much help with anything other than we had to get approval for our buildings because there are school children in our buildings, and we had to get those permits. But at the beginning, we were really quiet, and we went about our construction and built our school, and they didn't either offer any help or give us any hard time or anything like that. And, Central American politics don't have the, the greatest reputation. So, although I've always been friends with the mayors, I've always known them, and they've always been kind and, nice towards us. We haven't really worked together. The current mayor, totally different story. He is offering us support. He's paying some of our teacher salaries. He's
Nice.
offering us gravel, sand. He's engaging in us in a way where I think that they're starting to really see the value of our school. We also, a lot of our students go out into the community and build infrastructure for families who are living in poverty. And this mayor is going, "Hey, do you want some gravel? Do you want some sand? How can I help?" And he's doing it. And it is making a huge difference for us.
Nice. I was going to ask how the school has kind of affected, the building around the community. So that's good. It's good to hear that they're going out and giving back to the community from what they've learned at the school. What's the size of what's the population are we talking about?
Yeah, I think that whenever I moved there in 2002, we were at like 40 to 50,000 people, although it's not terribly easy to get solid statistics. I think we're at 75 to 80,000 people now. And I
Okay.
really, for the life of me, have no idea why the population is, is growing so fast because there's no industry, there's no new plant that moved there. But yeah, there's in the entire municipality, there's 80,000 people. I think in the center of town, there's probably, in the main municipal area, Comalapa, there's probably 40 or 50,000 people.
Okay. So I mean, that's not small. So that's,
Not a village, no.
no, no.
It felt like a village whenever I first went there. A really sleepy, quiet little town. But no, now I feel like the traffic has picked up.
I grew up in a community that was larger than the size of Rhode Island, but had 5,000 people in it. When
Yeah.
when I moved to Idaho, because it was in Alaska, I moved to Idaho, and there was an Albertsons across the street from my house, and I thought I was in the metro. I thought it could have been New York City because I could just walk over and grab a pot pie because that's all I could afford at the time.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I could just do it. So,
Mhm.
um, uh, can we talk a little bit about the investigation unit? And this is kind of the last thing that I have here, because I know we've touched on some of the things inside the investigation unit, but why is it called the investigation unit, first of all? And then kind of what is it?
Yeah, that's funny that you picked up on that because it's not the greatest title. Because, uh, so while we were building our campus, we had the Earthship book, but you get past the Earthship book and there is not a lot of sources for helping you learn how to do green building. And so while we were building every single one of the structures that we've done, and we have done a lot of structures outside of our campus, right? We're up to 150, 160 structures,
Oh,
right? And so we wanted to document every single one of the structures. So we made materials lists and blueprints and animated videos and YouTube videos and, little manuals And we did that for every single one of our buildings. And then we put that all in one place. And then I call it the investigation unit because I felt like for the last 20 years, we've been investigating sustainable building techniques to make them available and put them all in one place so that anybody else in the world would have access to what cost us so much money, so much time, and a lot of failure, right? Whenever you don't have other people to really lean on or to give you a lot of advice on how to do this, you fail a lot. So we were hoping to make it easier for people. And that's why I call it the investigation unit, because CSI or something like that, it kind of has that ring. That's not
Yeah.
what's going on. We wanted to document all of our work.
And it is like, you just keep scrolling. Like the page, like you could probably see on my face, the light is changing. I'm just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. There's so many things from, like I said, the cistern library to, this single earth bag dome. What is like, like so many unique different ways of building. This is fantastic. And then, you can learn more about the project if anybody's interested, and click on it. And you have it late. Websites are hard to organize. Whoever organized this, whether it was you or somebody else, did an extremely good job. There's fantastic pictures in here. Like, it's really easy to see, like you said, materials lists, blueprints. Like this should be the gold standard for disseminating information. So, good job.
Yeah,
So,
well, I personally collected all that. Now, as a team, we built it all together. And then it was on, this is before everybody was putting everything in, this is before cloud. So we had everything on hard drives. Then we had 15 different hard drives, and we had 4,000 volunteers, each with their own Facebook page. So I spent 5 or 6 years collecting everything to put it all in one place. If you look at the photographs for each profile, I sequenced every single one of the photographs. So if you look at the triple earth bag dome, there's 400 pictures there. Every single one of the pictures on that particular building is sequenced from the steps. And I had to pull them because we did not plan it. We did not go, okay, we're going to sequence this. We're going to make it available for everybody. It was kind of after the fact that I decided that I was actually going to launch into collecting and organizing all of the information. And it took a long time. And we are currently working on a new platform for this, because this platform that we have is nice, but it's not all that clean. And right now I have a couple of friends who are trying to put together a new platform for us to honor the quality and the quantity of information, plus moving forward. Because moving forward, our students and teachers are going to be doing the construction of all of this infrastructure along with our green builders. I'm going to want them to load all of this information into our new platform as part of the education model, right? This is where they're going to do their homework, is on the platform. They're going to document all of the buildings that they do. And then the overall concept of the experimentation, the investigation unit will make more sense, because the whole concept here is our students are supposed to be doing this investigation, and they will. And we have integrated it into their education. And so a lot of what you're seeing there, the main huge buildings, we've not done with kids because that's, a little bit more too advanced for them. But a lot of the smaller buildings, or the smaller structures, the water tanks and stoves, we did with our students.
Nice. It's a good, you get the formal education, and then you get some trade education. It gives them I love my kids. My kids are not going to be able to do anything around their house. They have zero interest in it. I'm like, hey, come help me do X, Y, and Z. I don't want to get on the roof. Get on the roof. These kids are going to be well above my kids in that regard, just because all of that information. Like, my dad was an electrician. I grew up with like my grandpa built things, and all of these things that I grew up with, and we're losing that here in the States anyway, in a large way. When I first got into the fire service, everybody pretty much came from a construction background, exception of me. And now very few of our new members come in with any sort of construction background. So matter of fact, some of them don't even know how to do laundry, which is not a joke.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it's the truth. They've never cleaned a bathroom before, that kind of thing. So my kids know how to
And
do
that's
that.
one of the things that's really kept me around Guatemala. And I like working with the folks there because they are scrappy,
Yeah.
like they know how to throw some things together. They know how to like work some things out in a pinch. I love working with the fifth graders who bring a machete to school, right? Because they've come from the fields and working all day. And when I say to a fifth, sixth, or seventh grader, hey, can you cut this 2x4 into like 3 feet? They know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Can you cut this brick to work within the stove? They know exactly what I'm talking about. They can take their machete and chop a brick in two. And that makes it, then you go like you're building off of their strengths, right? They're really good at some of these things. That's why we call it hero school, because I feel like the Guatemalans are like Green Berets,
Yeah.
like they are smart, tough, experienced, and they're in a fine position to do a lot of the work and take care of the people in their town. And our school is like where we get organized to do it.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest thing is being able to try something and fail and be okay with that and overcome it. That's huge for sure.
Right, that's what we call education.
Yeah, that's true. All right, Matt. We are 2 days before Christmas, so I'm not going to keep you much longer. But thank you so much. Where would people go to learn more about the Long Way Home?
You can reach me directly at matt@lwhome.org. I can answer all of your questions and help you to get to volunteer with us. And at lwhome.org, you can donate.
Perfect. And I'm going to put everything in the show notes, so it's easier to find, just in case you can't remember the email address or the website address. And Matt, thank you so much for coming on and sharing what the Long Way Home is up to.
I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.
We all remember the choices that shaped the course of our lives. In business, world-renowned venture capital firm Sequoia Capital calls them crucible moments. Their podcast brings you inside the pivotal decisions that define some of today's most influential companies. Hosted by Sequoia's Roelof Botha, Crucible Moments Season 3 pulls back the curtain on the untold stories behind companies like Zipline, Palo Alto Networks, Supercell, and more. Hear about the make-or-break decisions, early stumbles, and leaps of faith that turn scrappy startups into market-defining forces. Once you're caught up on Season 3, check out some of the episodes from Seasons 1 and 2, with guests like Stephen Chen of YouTube, Tony Xu of DoorDash, Steve Huffman of Reddit, Brian Chetsky of Airbnb, and more. Tune in to Sequoia's new season of Crucible Moments to discover how some of the most transformational companies of the modern era were built. Crucible Moments is available everywhere you get your podcasts and at cruciblemoments.com. Go listen to Crucible Moments today.
All right. Once again, I would like to thank Matt for coming on and being so generous with his time. I actually had a lot of fun talking to Matt, both on and off the air. So he is welcome on anytime. As always, I will put the website and Matt's email in the show notes if you want to contact him. Just a really nice guy, and I don't know. I couldn't have been more pleased with how this interview went. So, let's see here. So today is Friday. On Monday, I leave for CES, and then I'll be at CES until Thursday. I don't know what Tuesday's show is going to look like. I'll try to put something together from CES for that show. I plan on doing a lot more interviews than I did last year. So, and I got to actually sit down and kind of make a plan because, right now, I'm still very unorganized, but we'll make sure to get that done this weekend. And so I was a part of the Diamond Club, or the DC Diamond Club Streamathon that happened on New Year's. Hopefully everybody was able to take advantage of that. On Sunday, I'm actually going to release that episode just so everybody can hear it if they want to. It's not going to be Kilowatt specific. It's just going to be available if you want to check it out. So if you want, if you think that kind of thing is fun, if you enjoy the Thanksgiving episode, you might enjoy this. But I figure, well, I recorded the content, I have it saved, I might as well share it with everyone as well. And then, if you want to email me, it's Bodie, BODIE at 918digital.com. You can find me on X at 918digital. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, Bodie Grimm, BODIE, and then Grimm, GRIMM. What else? Website is 918digital.com. So I hope you all had a wonderful New Year's, and looking forward to 2026. And I will talk to you next week.